Recent events have been troubling. They have been heavy, to say the least. And there's a lot of things that we can learn from what has happened recently. First and foremost, the total depravity of man has essentially been live streamed to us, what feels like to be on a daily basis. Now, there are a lot of things we can talk about on just a moral side of things regarding recent events, from people getting killed just for their beliefs, people getting killed simply for the color of their skin, all sorts of things like that. Now, another thing that we should be considering, and this is what I want to do in this video, is really talk about the equipment that we're carrying every day with us. When we see events like this happen, it should make us think more intentional about what type of equipment we're carrying. Are we being serious about being prepared citizens, and are we ready to respond to times like this? Now, getting right into it, this video is going to be more principle-based approach than anything else. So what I mean by that is I'm not going to be recommending specific equipment to you guys. I'm going to be more or less giving you guys ideas to consider for improving your everyday carry. Now, as we go throughout this video, you're going to notice that there's going to be 3 different levels of everyday carry. So first and foremost, we're going to have level 1. This is going to be equipment that is immediate access, equipment that's carried on our body at all times, regardless of circumstances. We're going to have level 2 equipment. That's going to be gear in bag. That's going to be equipment that we normally carry every day with us, but it's not necessarily going to be immediate access, but it's going to be gear that supplements what's on our body. And then we're going to have level 3, which is going to be a step up, which is also going to supplement and also bring more capability. So jumping right into the level 1 equipment, there's a couple things that we need to think about. First and foremost, we need to carry equipment that we might actually need to use. So what I want to emphasize here is carrying medical equipment on your body. There's a lot of people that carry knives and flashlights and guns, but they carry absolutely no medical equipment. And these are the things that are probably going to be needed more likely than not comparatively to this other stuff. Now, before we get into the specifics here of what I carry, we need to talk about clothing. So what you actually carry, what you can actually carry when it comes down to the volume of equipment that you're carrying, is going to be very dependent on what types of clothes you wear. And for our everyday carry type scenario, considering our normal 9 to 5 type schedule, what clothes we wear to work are going to have a large influence on what type of equipment we're able to carry. So starting with the medical equipment, like I kind of already said, it's very important to carry medical equipment on you. You're more than likely going to need this to save lives than any of this other equipment. Now, there are a ton of good concealed carry, everyday carry type medical equipments out there. What I have here is the T.REX Arms Med C. This is a great kit. It's about the size of a wallet, fits in most back pockets pretty comfortably, but this paired with a tourniquet gives you basically an entire blowout kit from basically what you would see on like a plate carrier setup or something like that. Now, one thing to note about almost every everyday carry med kit out there is that you're only going to get 1 attempt at each intervention in this kit. So what I mean by that is generally these only have 1 gauze, 1 bandage, 1 chest seal in these kits because they're kind of small. And if you've ever had to treat a live casualty or have ever had to do live tissue training, that can be a little nerve-wracking. So just a note there, just make sure you have good training, good amount of reps in with this stuff, because if you do actually need to use this stuff and you're not properly trained, only 1 chance at something, especially when a life is on the line, is just not the best odds. So moving on from the med kit itself, we're going to get to the firearm. Now, the only thing I want to note here is that you should be carrying a pistol that you're comfortable with, and also something that you can actually fight with. Now, I know there's a lot of clothing requirements out there, like say you work in a job where you have to wear dress clothes, or you're going to church or something like that, where you need to carry a smaller gun, or you're going into an area, maybe your job doesn't allow guns, where concealability is a higher priority than having a large fighting gun. Totally understand that. But if whatever gun you're going to carry, whether it is a full-size or subcompact gun like this Glock 19, make sure you're comfortable with it, make sure you're trained with it, so if you do need to use it, you can use it appropriately and you can use it confidently. Now, for me, Glock 19 has been the go-to for almost 10 years now, but something that I've been carrying recently that I really enjoy is the Glock 48. It's the same length as the Glock 19, just a little bit thinner. So when I do go to church, I can carry this setup on my body, and then all of this other stuff can go into my little church bag, and I'm good to go there. So the gun and the medical are going to be our primary tools for saving life, going to be the most important tools that we have on us. And aside from this, we just have a multi-tool and a flashlight. So flashlight's important because bad guys really like to do bad things at night, and I would like to be able to illuminate things not only just for admin reasons, but also for more purposeful reasons, like illuminating somebody doing something bad, but I don't want to have to depend on the light that's mounted to my gun, so for obvious reasons. So having a flashlight, a good one, is definitely something that I recommend carrying. I have the Surefire EDC light. I like for a number of reasons, but additionally from there, we just have a multi-tool. So I'm not a big knife guy. I don't really know anything about knives, but what I do like to carry is something that has a little bit more use case than just a knife. So the Leatherman Skeletal, I'm mentioning this one specifically because I don't know of a lot of multi-tools out there that are this size that has these features. So we got pliers, we have a flatheads bit and a Phillips head bit all in one tool here, and it also does have a small knife. So these are the things that I like to carry on my body that I think are pretty important if I need to get to something immediately. So moving on from here, when we get into the level 2 equipment, you're going to notice that all of the gear that's in my bag that I normally carry with me is going to supplement, not replace, what's going on here in level 1. So getting into the level 2 equipment, let's define what that means first. So this is going to be the gear that you carry off body in a bag of some kind that you normally carry with you on an everyday basis. So what I mean by normally carry on an everyday basis is at least to your 9 to 5. So in your normal, kind of scheduled rotation. So obviously that implies that what type of bag, what type of, thing that you're carrying that equipment in is going to look different. It's going to be very dependent on your occupation, your environment, that sort of thing. But also one thing that's important to understand about this gear is that it's going to supplement what's on your body. So we want this gear to just make better, add a couple more capabilities to what we're already carrying on our body. So as we get into this, let's talk about the bag itself. Now for my job, I work on a laptop quite a bit, so I obviously need a bag that's going to basically help me with a normal office type job. I know I'm in an armory, it's a little unusual, but for the most part I am working behind a computer, and I think that's going to be the case for the majority of people. We are, unfortunately, in the modern age, we do a lot of work on a computer. So additionally, obviously I'm in a very permissive environment, so I have belt feds next to me. I don't need a bag that's super concealable, but given the fact that I will be carrying this bag, this equipment, other places other than work, I do still want it to be somewhat low vis. I don't want it to scream tactical. I don't want it to scream that there's stuff in here that I don't want people to know about. So these are just some things to consider when you're looking for a bag, is to try and keep it, concealable, everyday carry type mindset. We don't want, a bag full of Molly and Velcro and things like that. Now, actually getting into the contents, again, trying to keep this principle based. I'm just gonna show you guys some examples and trying to point out, again, some of those principle ideas as we go. I will be a little bit more specific than I probably need to be, so bear with me, but I think some of this could be helpful to you guys. So overall, with the idea of the bag, other than being able to carry the stuff I actually need for my work, I want it to have some good organization, and I want at least one quick access pocket. So what I mean by that is a pocket that has a good amount of volume in it that can carry stuff that if I need to get to it quickly, I want to be able to get to it quickly. Now, as we get through this, remember that this bag is supposed to be carried every day, but is probably not immediately accessible for a lot of us. So sometimes this bag, if we are carrying it every day, maybe have to be left in our car, maybe it's left at our desk and we have to go work somewhere else. All that to say is it's really important to understand with this gear supplementing what's on your body, you shouldn't be initially primarily dependent on any of this equipment. You should be, again, we already kind of talked about it, really dependent what's on your body, because this is the stuff that you're going to access immediately. So again, just want to harp on the principal idea of this gear supplementing what's on your body. Just want to drive that point home. So in this quick access pocket, these are going to be the things, again, if I need to get to them quickly, I want to get to them quickly. So I have a spare Glock magazine, again, spare ammunition for when I'm carrying my body, and just a Raptor carrier. So it's nice because if I want to carry this, I can just slip this in my waistband. It's still concealable, and it's, again, just additional ammunition. Now the next item we have here is a door wedge. So this is going to be intended to keep doors open or keep doors closed. It's a very nifty tool. Now before we go any further, let's also just keep in mind what the gear in this bag is intended to be prepared for, right? So obviously the most scary situation that you can probably find yourselves in with the current climate is an active shooter of some kind. So we want some sort of tools to help be an asset in a situation like that. Now obviously things like that, or things like the boogaloo, are still a very low risk, very low chance of happening. So some of this equipment should be geared towards things that are more likely to happen, like you experiencing a car accident, or you experiencing someone dropping something on their head at work or something like that. So please just keep that in mind. Like, you don't need quad tubes and a helmet in your everyday carry backpack. You probably need more medical, if anything else, but we'll kind of demonstrate that as we go through some of this equipment. But just in the idea of something like an active shooter, or maybe even a fire where you want to keep a door open, people like to panic when they can't breathe well or things get stressful. Something as simple as keeping a door open can be really beneficial in a situation. So these door wedges are like $5 off Amazon. They work really well. Got some AirPods, not all that important. Now this is another pretty quick access item that I think is probably the most important in this bag, and that is a glass breaker and a seatbelt cutter. So this is obviously intended for use inside of a car, but situations where you need to get out of a vehicle quickly, and let's just say the windows aren't working or your seatbelt's stuck, this is definitely a life-saving tool, and I want to be able to get to this quickly if I need it. I also have one of those in my car as well. Now I just have a spare light here, not all that important or quick access, but it just kind of fits in that location pretty well. Another really nice thing to have is a pair of gloves. So these are just some Oakley's really thin gloves that will wear out pretty quickly, but they pack up nice and tight, so they fit this bag pretty well. They're not something I wear on a regular basis. Now, getting into the rest of this stuff, I'm not going to show everything because it's not going to be all that beneficial to talk about, but we have, most importantly in this bag, additional medical. So again, thinking about supplementing what's on my body here, supplementing the tourniquet and the Med C that I carry with me, I have additional medical gear. So the Med C and the tourniquet on my body plus the expanded ITRK kit is going to give me a tremendous amount of medical capability, more so than what is even on most people's plate carriers. So we have a full IFAC Plus with just this stuff, and then I also have a little boo-boo kit here. So this has everything from Advil to some tape and some gloves, another tourniquet, and just some basic stuff. This is probably the stuff that you're going to use more likely than not, just fixing those small little boo-boos here and there. So I think that's very important and a really nice thing to have in your everyday carry. Now, speaking about something that you're more likely to encounter than something like a gunshot wound or something like that is a compound fracture. Very common thing in car accidents. So having a splint of some kind is definitely a wise thing to have on you. Even just like slipping down the stairs or something at your work, you can cause a broken bone. So now the next item in the bag we're going to talk about is some flex cuffs here. So obviously there's going to be some good debate about these. There's also some legal implications about carrying and using these, but as a Sixth Commandment company, we do value life quite a bit, including the life of people that want to harm us. So if there ever becomes a situation where I can draw down on someone, they stop, being a bad guy doing bad things, I can throw these at them, they can restrain themselves. That's obviously, in our opinion, a much bigger win versus actually having to take a life. So yes, it is kind of a fairy tale type situation that will probably never happen, but if I have the means to stop something bad from happening without taking a life, I think that is it's a good thing to strive for. So that's what we got going on with those. Next, we have a litter, actually. So we have a roll-up litter. I've showed this multiple times in concept before. People ask where I got it from. I was issued this. I forget the name of the company that makes it. It's not North American Rescue, but this guy rolls out quite nice, packs up pretty easily. But the cool thing about this is it's really easy to obviously transport casualties. So if someone is seriously injured where they can't walk or they're unconscious and it's just you can roll this out, lay them on it, and then you can drag them by this. I've actually used this in real life. I think I've talked about in concept before. Rolled up on an accident, unconscious individual, 4 compound fractures, and there's a very steep ditch to get the individual out of onto the road to the ambulance. And this was basically the only way we were able to do it because of how difficult the terrain was. So very unique, odd situation, but I have found that this can be quite useful in real life situations. So we got that going on. And the next and probably last significant item in the bag is going to be some sort of communication device that is not your cell phone. For me, it's a Garmin inReach. Just during my drive to work, I lose cell phone signal quite often. I mean, just imagine if I'm not paying attention, drive off into the road in one of those areas where I don't have cell phone service. This can be a life-saving piece of equipment. So I do recommend this, or maybe even a radio if you're into keeping your radio up to date and it's well tied into local repeaters and things like that. But I think this is one of the capabilities in your level 2 that should be added, and that is an additional means of communication. Now, I think having a radio is a great idea, so having both a radio in this, if you have the room in your bag, not a bad idea at all, but that's just what I got going on in there. From there, the rest of the stuff is pretty just small items. I do have a little battery guy here to charge my phone and be able to charge the inReach in case either one of those dies. At least we'll be able to get them about half charged if I need them, and then the rest of the stuff is just some small items. So I got some spare batteries, 550 cord, some zip ties, a D-ring or carabiner, and then some lens cleaners. We have some nice to haves like a spork. We have some basic hygiene stuff like some hand sanitizer, some dude wipes, some emergency toilet paper, and then we also have just some tape, pens and paper, just some basic everyday carry stuff. that are just nice to have in your bag. Now, what's in my level 2 everyday carry may look and probably will look different than what's in yours. If you're a construction worker, maybe your bag is a tool bag of some kind. If you're, a lawyer or something like that, maybe you have to carry a satchel bag. So what you can fit in that type stuff could look quite different than this. But the important principle to understand here is we want equipment that is going to be more likely used than the Boogaloo type of prep gear. So you're more likely to use stuff like your medical gear, like your emergency communication device, than you are a rifle with additional magazines. That's not necessarily what I would recommend putting in your level 2 equipment. Again, we want to be able to supplement what's on our body, just to hit on it one more time, but also have stuff that could actually be needed or used in a real life situation. But as we get into the next level of equipment, level 3, you're going to notice that the capabilities not only supplement, again, what's on level 1 and level 2, but also just increase quite a bit. As you can obviously tell, the capabilities have increased pretty significantly with the level 3 equipment. Now, before we get any further, it's definitely important to understand that this equipment I would not recommend to carry on an everyday basis. This is equipment that you would carry if things get a little crazy. You would definitely have to evaluate the current climate to determine if carrying this sort of equipment is necessary. Now, obviously, the main reason behind that line of thinking is the likelihood that you would actually need to use any of this is very, very low in normal everyday type situations. And in fact, carrying this equipment in your car on an everyday basis, the likelihood of someone breaking in and stealing it is much higher than you actually needing to use it. So if you're going to carry this stuff, really consider it and really make sure that it's worth that risk. We definitely don't want to arm bad people with bad guns. But if you do deem the current situation it does require carrying this sort of equipment, let's make sure that we're doing it correctly and smartly. So first and foremost, before we get into some of the interesting stuff here, let's talk about the bags itself. So I think duffel bags are probably the best solution for carrying all of this equipment, and that's for a number of reasons. So it doesn't have to be a bag like this Vertex bag here, although I think this bag works extremely well because it's designed to carry some heavy equipment. I've used Under Armour bags that are like 40 bucks. I've used the Wrangler duffel bags you can get from Walmart for like 25 bucks. All of those work well. Now, the only thing that I think is important to consider, well, there's two really main things, three main things to consider with these duffel bags. First and foremost, we want it to be somewhat concealable, somewhat low vis, somewhat of a bag that doesn't scream, I have a gun in here, right? I don't want it to scream, I'm autistic, I have a gun. Second thing, Now, the second thing to consider with the bags is we want it to be somewhat load bearing. So I want it to be able to actually be able to withstand the weight that's going in the bags. Guns and ammo can be quite heavy. So we don't want, just like the backpack idea, we don't want things poking through, revealing or printing what's in there. And also we don't want the bag just to wear out prematurely. So two things to consider there. And thirdly, what I think is the most important actually is I want the bag to be multi-purpose. So generally in most situations, if we're carrying this equipment somewhere, we're probably going to be going somewhere for a long period of time. So maybe that's a weekend trip, a week-long trip. So with that also to note, make sure you have different size bags to fit how long of a trip that you're going on, because what I would like to do with this bag is have all of my gear at the bottom of the bag and then put my normal stuff on top. So the reason for that is I don't want to have to leave my equipment in my car. I want to be able to, for example, carry it into the hotel room and it not look suspicious. And then also if I need to leave the hotel room, I want to be able to put my stuff back in the bag, take it with me, and it's not left unsecure in the hotel room. So a couple of considerations to think about with the bag itself. Again, kind of a principal idea. There's a lot of good options out there. I'm really digging the Vertex bags lately because they're a pretty good price. They hold weight really well and they don't look super gunny, if that makes sense. Now, I think the most interesting point in level 3 talk is the type of rifle that we're going to be including with this. So basically when we're stepping up to level 3, we're greatly increasing our lethality, as in we're going to have a long gun of some time, whether it's a carbine, a PDW, or a rifle. Any of those ideas work. And I think there's three main types here. So first and foremost, we have the smallest option, which is a PDW. So obviously the idea with this gun is it can get extremely small. And the other benefit to it is it's just 9mm. So finding ammunition for it, training with it is a lot easier than something like 300 Blackout, which we'll talk about here in a second. But I can keep this in the backpack that I showed earlier. If I put it in that duffel bag, the duffel bag doesn't have to be nearly as big because the gun is so small. And also picking a PDW like this, they're easy to shoot, they have low recoil, and they just run really, really well. So you don't have to worry about any sort of reliability issues, especially if you get something like this MP5. Now the next option, and the option that I would honestly recommend, is just doing a standard short carbine. So this is my 11.5 rifle. I think this is a great option, and that is for a number of reasons. So first and foremost, this is probably the gun that you're gonna be training with more than likely. 5.56 gun, and also 5.56 is extremely, extremely effective. So I have really good confidence with this gun, with its accuracy, its ability to have good terminal ballistics out to 200 meters, especially if I'm shooting something like 77 grain. But one thing that you may be looking at is this gun doesn't break down all that well. Now, cool thing about the AR-15 platform is just a couple of pins, and the gun breaks in half, and you can obviously store this in a bag pretty nicely. Now, if I take the suppressor off, it breaks down even further. So for me, this is the gun that I would be carrying in a situation like this. This also would be my primary home defense gun, and that is an important thing to note here, is all of this equipment, specifically the level 3 equipment, can also be used as your home defense equipment. So for me personally, it's just my 11.5 5.56 gun. As you guys saw from some of the B-roll footage, I was shooting an MCX with some of this equipment. That's actually a gun I used to own. I sold it because I have just really bought into just using a shorter 5.56 carbine due to round availability, the price point, and just the overall lethality of the gun comparatively to 300 Blackout. Now the third and final option that I would recommend, and there's obviously more options like running a short 308 gun or something ridiculous like that, is the 300 Blackout. So like I already mentioned, I sold my 300 Blackout, but it's still a very good option, specifically because of how much smaller this gun can get comparatively to 5.56, because the barrel length can be shorter. Now, for me personally, 300 Blackout guns just don't shoot as well as 5.56. They're not as reliable. The round availability is not as high. And also, I'm just not all that impressed with how well, on a terminal ballistic side of things, how well the 300 Blackout round performs comparatively to 5.56. So for me personally, running a 11.5 with a shorty suppressor or a full-size suppressor is not that much longer than this 9-inch 300 Blackout with a shorty suppressor. I just find the 5.56 I have a little bit more confidence in what that gun is able to do comparatively to this. But this is definitely a good option, specifically something like this that doesn't have a buffer tube. I can fold it. It obviously can dawn out of the bag much quicker than the 5.56 that's broken down. But running a setup like this is pretty cool. You can have your LPVOs zeroed for supers, the offset zeroed for subs. I do think magnification is pretty important, especially if you want to have a little bit of range capability. It's not so much that it makes the gun easier to shoot at distance, it obviously does, but just having some magnification to help identify things is a tremendous benefit. And with how good LPVOs are getting, especially on one buy, I don't think there's really any negatives to having it on the gun. No significant negatives, at least. So moving on to the equipment itself, there are a number of different ways you can go about this. You can go as simple as something like this active shooter, this Eagle Industries active shooter bag. You can go straight to a plate carrier, you can do a chest rig, you can do a number of different things here. But the idea here is you're going to want to pick something that just can bear more equipment. So for me, actually, the Eagle Industries active shooter bag is my favorite option. And there's a number of reasons for that. First and foremost, it's very easy to don quickly. And this is also just a great bag to have next to the bed for home defense. All it has is some additional medical. It has some more restraints for the same reasons like we talked about earlier, additional ammunition, and even has a headlamp, and it can just be donned very quickly. And I have this big open pocket on the back that I can put my cell phone or something else in. Say if I have to respond to something at night and all I'm wearing is boxers and Crocs, this bag can fit the bill pretty nicely. Now I have a plate carrier here because I think if we're planning on actually carrying our level 3 equipment, we probably want body armor if things are getting that hairy. So throwing in a slick plate carrier is definitely a good idea. Now with this plate carrier, it's just an AC0 super slick. I just have a carbine placard on front. I do have a radio on this, and the idea with the radio is be just a listen device. I would have it programmed for local frequencies where I can listen to, hopefully if they're not encrypted, at least some emergency frequencies like from law enforcement or fire or paramedics or something like that. So I just have a little bit more situational awareness. But that's essentially what's going on here. And I have additional medical, more tourniquet. There's a Faro Concepts roll one on the back, and then just a dump pouch here. But the other cool thing about this carrier here is I can run it completely slick with nothing attached to it, and then just put it on and throw the active shooter bag over it like I was doing earlier in the video, and it works really, really well. This guy can be reloaded from pretty quickly. It carries a good amount of equipment, and it's overall pretty slick. And really, other than that, other than just being able to carry more equipment, there's just some other small things they may want to consider. Again, thinking about things getting pretty hairy and looking at some previous events that happened fairly recently, like riots and things like that. Having a gas mask that can filter things like CS gas and stuff like that is not a bad idea to have in your bag, especially considering if you're going to be planning out what goes in this bag and you know you're going to be driving through or just experiencing something quite frantic like riots in Portland or something. Having something like a gas mask is not a bad idea. You can even get pretty crazy, throw some smoke grenades or even some legal airsoft flashbangs in there if you want to get super prepared, I guess you want to say. But these are all just things that you should consider. So really the main idea behind the level 3 equipment is just, it's really a large supplementation of stuff we already have, but in really increasing the lethality. So we do have a carbine, we do have the ability to carry much more equipment, and then we also bring on some more capabilities like, for example, a gas mask or something like smoke grenades or even flashbangs if you want to get really spicy. Now I know this is somewhat in the fairy tale land side of things. This hopefully is equipment we never have to carry in our car, but just with the recent events we saw pretty recently and also just over the last couple of years, we have seen here in the States situations where having this equipment would have been very beneficial. If we want to combat bad people doing bad things, we need to be prepared. We need to be able to respond and be able to respond effectively. It's much easier to respond with a rifle of ourselves and body armor than it is to respond with something like just a Glock 43X in our pants. So consider this stuff. Be intentional with your everyday carry. Take this stuff very seriously, because the #1 defense that we have against bad guys doing bad things is normalizing this equipment. If bad guys know there's a lot of good people out there carrying this sort of equipment, they're going to be much less likely to do bad things. So I appreciate your guys' time watching this video. I hope it was helpful. If you guys have any questions about any of this equipment, if you need further help with your everyday carry, don't forget you can shoot an email to our CS team. We'll be happy to help you. I love you guys. We'll catch you guys next time.